some of the scariest stuff we can find is out in the vastness, in the foliage of the forest.
And some of it was found this year. This is what we found so far.
So these are some of the freshest, latest stories of some of the creepiest stuff found in the woods. Alright, I got a new Bigfoot video for you guys. This video was posted to TikTok by the Kentucky Bigfoot Research Organization with the description reading, "Alleged trail camera footage has emerged of what appears to be a giant black Bigfoot throwing trees and destroying a potential crime scene where it is said human remains were located." So this is a pretty clear video. The creature is obscured by trees, but we do get a nice long look at it, and just like the description says, whatever this thing is, it's picking up big logs and hurling them around like they're nothing. Take a look. Yeah, that ain't no bear, the way it like picks it up and just like slams it down like that. If I saw some hairy thing slamming a log down in the middle of the woods, I would be booking it right out of there. There are a few things that make this video convincing. For one, the clear strength the thing seems to exhibit. One commenter wrote, "I had a tree business before, so I know the weight of logs, and that would take extraordinary strength to do that." I also like that this footage was supposedly taken with a trail camera. If this had been taken by some hiker in the woods, I'd be wondering why they stuck around to film when it's pretty obvious you'd be running for your life. Anyway, what do you all think of this one? Hoax? Genuine? Let me know down in the comments.
Next up, we have the shocking discovery of Cole Brings Plenty, an actor best known for his role on Into the Wild Frontier, as well as his work on 1923 and The Tall Tales of Jim Bridger. Plenty was last seen on March 30th of this year, driving his white Ford Explorer out of Lawrence, Kansas. He was reported missing the following day. After receiving a call about an empty vehicle matching the description of Plenty's, police canvassed the woods nearby where it had been left. And on April 5th of this year, 2024, Cole Brings Plenty was found dead. While the cause of death has yet to be shared with the public, police insist that they will continue to investigate the passing and provide more information as time goes on.
Aliens in Brazil. So this is a bit of a weird story. Just back in January, hikers in Brazil captured some strange figures looming over them at the top of a hill. Figures who they believed to be of extraterrestrial origin. And I will say, whatever these things are, they don't look human. I mean, not quite. There's something just kind of off about them. The footage was captured on an island about 285 miles down the coast from Sao Paulo. In the video, we see a beautiful hillside, but perched on top are two tall humanoid figures silhouetted against the sky. And considering how far away they are, they look to be pretty tall. The people who posted the video said they were about 10 feet tall. Now on top of that, their bodies just look weird. They're very slender, and zooming in on one of these things here, yeah, just take a look at how long that arm is. I mean, sure, the image is blurry. Maybe it's just kind of distorted, or maybe, you know, Slender Man was on vacation in Brazil. It does have a bit of a Slender Man kind of look to it. Now, if you're wondering, oh, maybe these were just like, you know, scarecrow type things at the top of the hill, you do actually see them move a little bit in the footage, and they don't move naturally either. I don't know, could totally be a hoax, could also be genuine. Let us know your thoughts in the comments.
Next up, we have another body found in the woods, this time just off of Richmond International Raceway, a car racing track located in Henrico County in the state of Virginia. Around 4 p.m. on April 25th, a man visiting the track went to use the washroom when he noticed a strong smell. When he followed it, he discovered the body of an unknown man or woman that, according to reports, was not skeletal but had likely been in the woods for an extended period of time before being discovered. Of course, seeing as this is incredibly recent, there is not much information on the case, other than it seems as though the body was left there intentionally. Police have yet to release the cause of death or any other identifying information on the deceased, probably because they don't know. They did state that they are sifting through missing persons reports in an effort to identify who the victim might be.
And we're starting off the list with the Challenger Deep. Imagine taking a journey to the deepest point on Earth. Earth. It would be exciting for sure, but undeniably terrifying at the same time. The Challenger Deep is the deepest known point of the seabed of Earth. This extreme abyss lies at the southern end of the Mariana Trench in the western Pacific Ocean. James Cameron didn't just stick to directing blockbusters. He's a deep sea enthusiast as well. In 2012, he climbed into a specially designed submersible called the Deep Sea Challenger and descended about 36,000 feet, reaching the Challenger Deep, which is deeper than Mount Everest is tall. There's a handful of others who've dared to explore this mysterious abyss. Victor Vescovo, a Texan adventurer and businessman, went deeper in 2019. His submersible, the Limiting Factor, touched the ocean floor at a whopping 36,070 feet, breaking records. So right, it's deep, but what's down there? All sorts of weird and wonderful creatures, and some of them have never been seen anywhere else on Earth. Deep sea divers have also discovered microorganisms that thrive in the extreme conditions of the deep where sunlight can't penetrate. They survive in total darkness and under intense pressure. Organisms like this are pretty cool to discover too, because it makes us really question what the true limits of life are and the potential for extraterrestrial life in the universe that may thrive in environments we never thought living matter could. Number 9, humanoid creatures. So the year is 1982, and Russian military divers are conducting routine training exercises in the deep, dark waters of Lake Baikal, the world's deepest freshwater lake. These divers reported encountering something they couldn't wrap their heads around: humanoid creatures. Survivors stated the beings were about 9 feet tall, with humanoid features and silvery scales or suits covering their bodies. Some even say they had large, unblinking eyes that emitted an eerie glow. Now, the official stance is predictably hush hush. The Soviet government supposedly classified any information related to this incident, which of course just turned cryptid and UFO enthusiast cranks even more. What makes a possible extraterrestrial or mythical creature sighting more plausible than a government cover-up? And at number 8, we have a story posted to Reddit by user Digestive's Rule. This was in response to a thread asking divers what the creepiest thing they'd experienced while diving was. Digestive's Rule wrote, "I'm a commercial diver and was once on a job cleaning a portable water reservoir. I'd been in other reservoirs before, but this one was by far the biggest, at 40 by 80 meters. To get in, you had to open a hatch in the ground. The whole reservoir was underground, and climb down a ladder. The hatch was in a corner, so when you were in the far corner of the reservoir, it was completely pitch black, and you just had to hope your light didn't go out. I was about halfway through a 3-hour dive when the batteries in my torch started going flat. I watched the beam get narrower and dimmer until it cut out completely. It's not a huge problem if you lose light, as you can just follow your umbilical back to the hatch. Just as I started walking back, some obnoxiously loud banging started somewhere in the reservoir. I was the only diver in there, so it both confused and scared the out of me. Needless to say, I ran back to the hatch as fast as I could. I ended up getting my torch changed out and doing another hour in the water, but I didn't hear the noise again. I still have no idea what it was, but the combination of my torch going out and loud banging coming from somewhere gave me a hell of a fright. Now let us turn our attention to the elusive giant squid. So for the longest time, these colossal creatures were thought of in the same way the Loch Ness Monster is, simply rumored to exist, but rarely seen and often dismissed as seafaring folklore. The big breakthrough in the giant squid saga came in 2004, when researchers and a Japanese film crew managed to capture the first images of a living giant squid in its natural habitat. I cannot imagine the excitement. They basically stumbled on a real-life sea monster. The series of images were a game changer, proving that these creatures weren't just the stuff of sailors' tall tales. Then in 2012, another significant moment occurred when scientists managed to capture giant squid footage for the first time in its natural habitat. This time, submersibles were used to spot the creature. So what makes giant squids so fascinating, other than how elusive they are? Well, they're colossal. Some individuals can reach lengths of up to 43 feet with eyes the size of basketballs. animals. Speaking of giant stuff, let's talk a bit about giant isopods. The giant isopod is a crustacean that inhabits the Mariana Trench and other deep sea environments. They kind of look like an oversized pill bug. These things can reach lengths of over 16 inches. Thank God these things were designated for deep sea environments. I've always thought potato bugs are actually kind of cute, but they would not be cute if they were 16 inches long. Don't have the time for that kind of thing scuttling around my apartment. Giant isopods are scavengers feeding on the remains of dead animals that sink to the trench floor. Their slow metabolism allows them to survive on limited food resources in the deep sea environment.
Starting off our list today with the Frankenstein bog mummies. In 2002, a team of archaeologists discovered two bodies in Scotland, belonging to two people who had died 3,000 years ago before being thrown into a bog where they were preserved and mummified and then buried 300 to 600 years later. One was the body of a man and the other the body of a woman, or so they thought. Upon closer inspection, researchers quickly realized that something about the skeletal remains of both bodies weren't quite right. The man's limbs seemed out of place and the woman's jaw was slightly too large for her skull. Fast forward 10 years to 2012 and researchers discovered that they didn't find the body of two people, but the body parts of at least half a dozen. The woman was made up of body parts from people who had all died around the same time, while the man was made up of parts belonging to people who had died up to hundreds of years apart. Not only that, but evidence suggested that when the parts were put together, they would have still had mummified flesh on their bones, which is unpleasant to say the least, but it's a super dark and incredibly interesting discovery.
So this is incredibly cool. Archaeologists in Crete may have recently come across the most famous labyrinth in all of history. The labyrinth that was said to hold the Minotaur from Greek mythology. The Minotaur was a fearsome creature with the body of a man and the head of a bull, which lived in a labyrinth on the island of Crete, as the story goes. So this 4,000-year-old labyrinth on the island of Crete may have been the actual inspiration for that ancient story, which is amazing. The labyrinth was found on Papara Hill, and it's the first structure of its kind discovered in the area. The Greek Ministry of Culture says the Minoan civilization built it between 2000 and 1700 BCE. That has 8 circular stone walls arranged into a maze formation, and some parts of the walls are still standing up to 5.5 feet high. The structure is divided into 4 sections by internal walls, creating a series of passageways, and inside there's a small circular building, also divided into quadrants. Now, aside from the labyrinth's potential connection to that mythological tale of the Minotaur, they're still not 100% sure what it was actually built for, but they did find a bunch of animal bones that may have been used for rituals and offerings. Either that or animals just wandered into the maze and then were never able to make it out. That's always a possibility as well.
Next up, we have a mass grave discovered in Slovakia just 2 years ago in 2022, containing approximately 35 skeletons, the majority of which were missing their heads. The grave dates all the way back to 5000 BC, and researchers believe that the bodies excavated from the site likely belonged to the victims of sacrifice. Due to the grave site, which is essentially just a large ditch's proximity to a defense wall, archaeologists studying the find have theorized that the decapitated individuals were killed in the hopes that their sacrificial deaths would strengthen the wall and therefore provide safety to the communities living in the area. Many of the skeletons found belong to people who died around the middle or near end of their pre-adulthood lives, I'm talking 20 and under, which indicate that they might have been sacrificed for their strength, stamina, and agility.
In 2015, archaeologists made a pretty remarkable but unsettling discovery in Flanders, Belgium. They uncovered the bodies of 125 World War I soldiers in a perfectly preserved German trench system. So this area had been untouched since the war ended, hidden beneath what is now a housing development. Most of the soldiers were German, but there were also British, French, and South African men. The soldiers fell during some of the fiercest battles of the war. Some of their remains were found right where they had died. Others were buried in mass graves by their comrades, often with religious artifacts. And the site was about the size of 2 football fields on a ridge known as Hill 80. This ridge saw intense combat, especially during the First Battle of Ypres in November of 1914, where a lot of German soldiers died. The area was later taken by British and Irish troops in June of 1917, but then the Germans retook it again in 1918, leading to even more casualties on both sides. There were more personal items as well, like watches, religious items like crucifixes and rosary beads, and there was even a bottle of HP sauce, which just goes to show that these were real people, you know, making food. And I think a lot of times when we look back on these words, it's easy to disconnect from the fact that, you know, they had HP sauce they were cooking with. Makes it all seem more real.
Next up, we have a pretty macabre discovery made in 2019 during an excavation that took place in Selango, Ecuador. Along with the remains of 11 people who would have been buried at the site and multiple ancient artifacts were 2 helmets made from human bones. Skulls, to be exact, and young ones too. Apparently 2 of the young bodies they found were wearing the skulls of other slightly older young people over their heads like some kind of disturbing medieval bike helmet. I shudder to think of what they might have used for straps. While it is unknown why the helmets were placed onto the heads of the young bodies, it is assumed that it was likely done so during the time of their burials as part of a ritual designed to protect them in the afterlife. However, other theories suggest that the young bodies were buried as part of a ritual meant to calm an active volcano nearby, i.e. they were sacrifices. It's pretty dark.
Microorganisms. They're not something we have on our minds all that often. As underwhelming as they may sound though, what if I were to tell you there could be ancient, potentially extraterrestrial microorganisms buried in the ice and permafrost around the world? The North and South Pole might seem like frozen wastelands, but deep beneath the surface of the ice, there are thriving ecosystems. Scientists have been drilling into the ice for years, taking samples from deep below the surface, and what they've found is microorganisms living in pretty extreme conditions. Bacteria and fungi that survive in the harsh cold and lack of sunlight. But what if there's more to these microbes than meets the eye? Could there be life deep below the ice that comes from another world? Let's take Antarctica for example. It's one of the few places on Earth that's remained relatively unchanged for millions of years. So the theory goes that if microorganisms from space ever landed here, they might have been preserved in the ice. Might sound like science fiction, and that's why you don't hear a lot of public discussion from scientists about this, but there are researchers taking it very seriously. Some even believe that finding extraterrestrial microbes in Antarctica could change everything we know about life in the universe. Ancient alien microorganisms sounds a little too ridiculous for you? Well, how about something far more concerning and very much real? Ancient viruses trapped under layers of ice. Silent threats buried deep in the ice and permafrost in various parts of the world. Maybe even some that have been found just haven't been disclosed to us yet. What virus could that be specifically? Who knows, but there could be dormant viruses that our immune systems aren't ready to deal with. And leaving aside any speculation, there have been some alarming things found over the years. In 1997, a lung sample from a woman buried in permafrost in Alaska was found to have genetic material from the 1918 flu outbreak. Then in 2012, scientists discovered that a 300-year-old mummy from Siberia had the genetic markers of the smallpox virus. And more recently, an anthrax outbreak in Siberia in 2016, which affected humans and reindeer, was traced back to thawing permafrost. Scientists like Birgitta Evengard from Umeå University in Sweden have warned that if we come across a virus we haven't seen for thousands of years, our immune systems might not be prepared, and that is truly terrifying. The deep sea is also terrifying. It's the last great frontier on Earth, and the deeper you go, the stranger things seem to become. You got bioluminescent creatures that light up the dark to fish with eyes adapted to see in almost total darkness. Tons of weird alien-looking life forms. The deep sea is almost like a whole other world, and that's really cool. But what if there are creatures down there that we're not prepared to encounter? Scientists have discovered giant squids with eyes the size of basketballs, fish with fangs so long they look like they're just from a completely different animal. But beyond these known animals, there are theories that the deep sea might be far more terrifying than we could ever imagine. Some speculate that unknown, possibly dangerous organisms could be lurking far beneath the surface, and it's possible that scientists have come across them but haven't shared their findings with the public. As for what they could be, well, maybe remnants of creatures from prehistoric times, or maybe even something more sentient. There are stories from around the world of people spotting strange creatures gliding through the water they've never seen before. Could some just be misidentified whales or whatnot? Sure, but the ocean is vast and mostly unexplored. It's not even remotely a stretch to say that there could be some validity to at least some of these stories. CRISPR technology allows for precise genetic editing. And while the technology is pretty exciting, there are some very real concerns about negative consequences in human evolution. On the surface, it sounds amazing, fixing genetic disorders, potentially curing diseases, but there's a darker side to this technology that you might not hear as much about. For starters, CRISPR allows scientists to cut and paste DNA almost as easily as you edit a document on your computer. At least it'll get to that point anyway. And this means they can theoretically create genetically modified organisms with almost limitless possibilities. This could lead to incredible advancements, but let's just say someone decides to use CRISPR for more nefarious purposes, like the creation of, say, a superbug, or to create a new breed of bioengineered soldiers. There's a lot of sinister potential here. Dark matter and dark energy. They both sound very ominous. They're two of the biggest mysteries in modern science. We know they exist because of their effects on the universe, but we can't actually see them or understand them completely. Even though they make up about 95% of the universe, dark matter is thought to be the substance that holds galaxies together. Without it, galaxies would just fly apart. We can't see it, but we know it's there because of its gravitational effects. Then there's dark energy. This is what's thought to cause the expansion of the universe, a force pushing everything apart faster and faster. Kind of like the real life force, I've just realized. It's like actually pushing things, you know? As for what it is, why is it there? You know, it's impossible to say for sure, but there's an idea that what we're calling dark matter and dark energy might have something to do with other dimensions. There are tons of conspiracy theories along these lines that the government or certain scientific groups might already know more about dark matter and dark energy than they're letting on. That they've even found ways to harness or interact with these forces in ways we can't even imagine. And if that sounds too far-fetched, at the very least, know that real scientists are exploring the possibility. Science is a constant, ever-changing pursuit of the truth. It's not a rigid set of beliefs. So, I mean, who knows? Maybe the truth is more bizarre and unsettling than we'd like to know.
In January 2024, scientists made a groundbreaking discovery while filming the National Geographic series Pole to Pole with Will Smith for Disney+, the largest anaconda ever recorded, a new species called Eunectes akiyama, or the northern green anaconda. Until then, it was believed that only one species of green anaconda existed. However, this new discovery, published in the scientific journal MDPI Diversity in February, proved otherwise. Researcher Brian G. Fry, speaking to Reuters, explained that their original mission was to study anacondas as indicator species to assess the environmental damage caused by rampant oil spills in Ecuador's Yasuni region. The two species of green anacondas split nearly 10 million years ago, yet remain genetically almost identical. This find not only sheds light on the diversity of wildlife, but also underscores the impact of human activities on these very fragile ecosystems. In January 2024, researchers made an exciting announcement in the journal PLOS1, the discovery of a new species of lizard called Abronia cunemica, also known as the Copilla arboreal alligator lizard. This journey began back in 2014 when the species was first spotted in photographs taken in the northern highlands of Chiapas, Mexico. Between 2015 and 2022, scientists embarked on 5 expeditions to the region, determined to gather enough evidence to officially classify the species. Their efforts paid off, and Abronia cunemica was finally confirmed. As reported by the Miami Herald, this unique lizard dwells high up in trees, showcasing distinctive brown and yellow yellow scales and can grow to over 9 inches long. This discovery not only adds to our understanding of the biodiversity in this region, but also highlights the thrill of uncovering species previously unknown to science. In 2024, scientists aboard the RV Falker made an exciting discovery off the coast of Costa Rica, a new species of deep-sea octopus, the Dorado octopus. This new species is a part of the mus octopus gene, and it was found during an expedition exploring seamounts and hydrothermal vents. The octopuses were observed brooding their eggs near these warm vents, which provide an ideal environment for their offspring to hatch faster. Named after the discovery site El Dorado Hill, the Dorado octopus stands out as a close relative of the pearl octopus discovered off of California. This discovery adds to growing evidence that many deep-sea octopuses have evolved to take advantage of these hydrothermal habitats. The research team, led by doctors Beth Orcutt and Jorge Cortez, also identified several other new octopus species during their expeditions, contributing to the rich biodiversity of the deep Pacific waters. In 2019, a commercial fossil hunter named Mark Itma made an exciting discovery on a ranch in Montana, a set of dinosaur bones unlike anything ever seen before. I know that this discovery didn't happen right in 2024, okay, you can stop typing your comment, but there are still so many discussions and debates going on about its classification, which I think makes it a perfect candidate for this list today. This skeleton caught the attention of experts, and it was eventually purchased by Denmark's Museum of Evolution, where it is now proudly displayed. This newly discovered species, named Lokiceratops rangiformis, was given its unique name due to its striking horns, which resemble those of Norse god Loki. The name perfectly captures the creature's mysterious and powerful appearance, adding a mythological flair to this remarkable paleontological find. In an exciting deep-sea expedition off the coast of Chile, researchers uncovered over 100 previously unknown marine species, as well as several massive underwater mountains, including one towering more than 4 times taller than the Burj Khalifa. These newly discovered species include bizarre and fascinating creatures like intricate sponges, spiral-shaped corals, and a bright red sea toad with hand-like fins. The expedition, carried out by the Schmidt Ocean Institute, used an underwater robot to explore the slopes of seamounts, revealing this stunning biodiversity in one of the world's most remote and unexplored regions. While identifying and classifying these new species will take time, the discovery offers a glimpse into the rich, hidden ecosystems of the deep ocean and underscores the importance of protecting these very vulnerable habitats. In 2019, researchers from the non-profit Ocean X and the Cape Eleuthera Island School embarked on an ambitious mission to the Bahamas, specifically to explore the depths of Exuma Sound. During their expedition, they stumbled upon an entirely new species of Isopod, which they fittingly named Burralana nicorum. However, it wasn't until January 2024 that they shared their exciting discovery in the journal Zootaxa. This ancient crustacean, estimated to be 300 million years old, is a distant relative of the beloved roly-poly. By studying this remarkable species, scientists hope to uncover crucial insights into the ecosystem of the Great Bahama Banks, one of the most unique marine environments on Earth. The discovery offers a glimpse into the deep history of our oceans and promises to shed light on the delicate balance of life that thrives in these waters. We're
going to start off the list with a recent UFO sighting in Middletown. So in June of 2023, a number of residents reported seeing strange lights in the sky over town. The lights were in a circular formation, rotating. A man named Caden Little managed to capture the weird lights on video. We see them hovering in place, rotating in a counterclockwise direction before flying off at such an amazing speed that if you blink, it just looks like they vanish completely. President of the Cincinnati Astronomical Society, Brian Simpson, looked at the footage, saying that the lights definitely weren't from a drone based on the speed at which they flew out of sight. I think this is a pretty cool piece of footage, but what do you guys think? Genuine? Hoax? Leave your thoughts down in the comments. And while you're at it, why not hit that subscribe button as well. Here's a creepy piece of footage from TikTok. A couple was hiking at night in Ohio when they pulled out their camera to film this pair of eyes peeking out at them from the tree line. At first, they thought it was a deer, but at one point they realize it really doesn't seem to be a deer. Something about the way the eyes are moving and the fact that deers rarely decide to follow people. I really want nothing to do with human beings. So it becomes pretty clear that there's something else tailing them. Now, we never get to see the creature in full. It lurks in the shadows the entire time, but some commenters have said it kind of moves like a big cat. Others have commented it could be the Ohio grassman or dogman. Whether this was a cryptid or a predatory animal, either would be terrifying. Eventually, the couple wisely decides to hurry out of there. The small village of Sabina once had something of a mascot, a very macabre mascot. It was a mummy. So in 1929, an African-American man in his mid to late 40s was found dead on a road near Sabina. No ID, just $1.40 in cash and a scrap of paper with an address that turned out to be a vacant lot in Cincinnati. The authorities had no idea who this guy was, so they went with the name Eugene. Eugene the mummy was taken to Sabina's Littleton funeral home and embalmed. They put him in a brick shed by a bus stop, thinking maybe someone would recognize him during the 30-day viewing period. But no luck. Folks in Sabina got kind of attached to their new resident, though. They cleaned him up, they changed his clothes. Things got really weird, though, when local kids started playing with him and moving him around, even swiping his gold teeth. Teenagers would even take the poor guy out on joyrides. The mummy ended up being taken to Ohio State University, was placed on a bench outside the school to scare students. The Littleton funeral home got wind of this, and Eugene was sent back to Sabina, and at this point it was clear the guy needed to be buried. Eugene got a plot in the local cemetery, complete with a stone that says he was found dead in 1929, buried 1964. His identity is still a complete mystery. Next up, we have the case of the Peninsula Python. I think this is one of my favorite stories to come out of Ohio. It's not often that a massive-sized wild python ends up roaming through a middle American state, but in one magical summer in Ohio, that's exactly what happened. In the summer of 1944, something strange happened in Summit County, Ohio, near the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. People started reporting sightings of a massive python about 15 feet long and incredibly thick. Now, at first, authorities didn't take these reports seriously, thinking it might be a hoax or some kind of wild exaggeration. As it turned out, though, what could have gone down as just another one of Ohio's many urban legends turned out to actually be very real. The residents were not making it up. Somehow, a large python was let loose. No one could explain how the snake ended up in Ohio, but there it was. During that summer, the residents were terrified as the enormous snake roamed through farms, leaving behind indentations the size of giant tires. To make matters worse, the python even attacked livestock. Of course it did, right? Authorities spent the whole summer hunting this thing down, but it was never found. It just disappeared eventually. Most likely it died from exposure during the harsh Ohio winter. Next up is the Crosswick monster case. This was a very well-documented case at the time, and is one of the strangest stories ever to come out of the state of Ohio. Just saying a lot. So in 1882, two boys, Ed and Joe Lynch, had a really terrifying encounter with a strange creature in a field. They heard strange noises from tall grass, and before they could react, they said they saw this large lizard-like beast with 4 legs come out of them. The creature approached the two, grabbed Ed in its jaws, and started dragging him towards a hollowed-out tree. Ed's screams ended up catching the attention of nearby men who rushed over to help. They managed to rescue Ed, but he was injured. After the incident, 60 men armed themselves with axes and clubs, and they formed a posse to hunt down this thing. They caught up with it, and the creature then stood on its hind legs. The chase led them to a hill of rocks where the creature escaped into a hole, never to be seen again. The local newspaper reported the story at the time, and it's since become a staple of Ohio's folklore. And I could see why. A lot of folks saw this thing that day. The exact nature of the creature, still a total mystery. So yeah, I don't know. I just love that story. Anytime there's like a multiple people who see something, that just it makes it far more interesting for me. Next is another UFO case. This is the Trumbull County incident. This was a series of events where numerous residents reported seeing these unusual lights in the sky. Even police officers reported seeing things. Multiple residents reported sightings of odd lights in the night sky, describing them as bright and unusual aerial activities. Officer Toby Maloro was on duty that night. He was dispatched to investigate reported lights, and he was driving closer and closer to the source of these lights, keeping contact with the dispatcher, describing what he saw in real time. And at one point, radio communication was suddenly cut off, and his vehicle stopped. Maloro then became engulfed in a bright light from above. He got out of his vehicle for some reason to get a better view and reported seeing this massive circular object hovering in the sky. One of the strangest parts about his description of these events is that even though this thing was massive, it was almost completely silent. After a period of time, the object began to move away, and just as the craft moved off, his car and radio started working again. It's a pretty fascinating case, not just because of the detailed account made by Officer Malero, but all the corroborating reports from other residents as well. Now, a corroborated UFO case is one thing, but mass amounts of people frantically phoning into the police claiming to witness a large mutated octopus man, that is a whole other story. Very wild case right here. So the Octoman case, this unfolded on the 29th of January, 1959 in Cincinnati. It was a series of reports to the local cops about a bizarre octopus-like creature. The first report came from a man who urgently contacted police. He had a hard time describing what he was seeing because no one's ever seen a mutated octopus man before. And then a truck driver phoned up saying he'd encountered an unusual creature while driving into Cincinnati. Reports then just kept flooding in. The common thread with these calls is that people apparently sounded genuinely distressed. The creature was described as very large and had grayish skin, tentacle-like appendages, and a lopsided chest. Not sure exactly what that means, but I don't know, just maybe kind of like hunchback kind of. One witness provided a more detailed account, stating it was large. Not a dog or a cat. It leaped in front of my car on two legs and was taller than the auto. When I looked back in my mirror, it was moving along the bridge rail. It was 3 or 4 times the size of a man and much bulkier. I have an eye and mind for dimensions, and I know it was huge. If I ever had the opportunity to go back in time, like forget going to Woodstock or anything like that, I'd just be like, take me to Cincinnati, Ohio, January 29th, 1959. I just want to know what everyone saw that night. Like, was it just a guy with a horrible deformity? Was there just something weird in the air that night? Or was there a freaking octopus creature roaming around that bridge? I desperately want to know. The Cedar Bog Monster. So the Cedar Bog Monster is just one of Ohio's many variations of Bigfoot. Back in the 50s, people started spreading stories about a creature hanging out in the Cedar Bog Nature Preserve. It was described as a large, hairy figure standing around 7 feet tall, with eyes that shined in the dark, and a not-so-pleasant odor. One of the most famous sightings was from a couple who had parked near the bog. They spotted the huge, hairy creature strolling along Woodburn Road, which runs right beside the bog. They hightailed it out of there, of course, and reported the incident to the police. And there would be more and more accounts being reported. People started saying they were hearing strange noises in the woods, like grunts and howls. Some would find massive-sized footprints. Local news even featured the Cedar Bog Monster in a headline. Now, what I wonder is, if this thing really did exist, is it a different creature than the Grassman and Orange Eyes and like all these other big hairy creatures roaming around Ohio? Or are these folks seeing the same creature or species of creature? These are the important questions you have to ask yourself. Another one of Ohio's strangest cases is the Werewolf of Defiance sightings. So in the summer of 1972, on the Norfolk and Western Railway in Defiance, 2 railroad workers, Ted Davis and Tom Jones, experienced a bizarre and unsettling event that would later be dubbed the Werewolf of Defiance case. It all began with Ted Davis. who, while working away on the railroad, saw something otherworldly. He reported seeing a large wolf-like creature. The creature actually held a wooden board in its paws, and without warning, it swung the board, striking Ted squarely on the shoulder. The creature then hastily retreated into the bushes like a coward. 5 days later, Ted and his coworker, Tom Jones, returned to the railway for another day of work. For some reason, they didn't quit after that first encounter. Sure enough, the creature shows up again, and this time it was actually a safe distance away from the two, and Ted and Tom then reported their encounters to the local police. Little did they know that their report was just the beginning of a wave of Wolfman sightings in the area. Other reports started flooding in, each detailing sightings of this menacing wolf monster, but reports started to trickle out by the end of that summer. So, did people hear about that first report and just want attention? Was the whole thing a big hoax? Once again, I'd really love to go back in time and just hide by that railway to watch the whole thing play out. Finally, we have the case of the Minerva monster. Back in 1978, folks in Minerva started talking about a hairy creature running around in the woods. A big, hairy, unknown beast. People claimed it was about 7 feet tall, had reddish-brown hair, and looked like a giant ape. Yes, another giant ape in Ohio. There are many. It all started when the Caton family saw this monster near a gravel pit outside their house, and they saw it on more than one occasion. One night they saw it peering at them through their window. It would also hurl rocks at their home. A real awful creature. It scared the living daylights out. Of course, they even said it smelled bad, like a mix of skunk and a wet dog. Not exactly a pleasant combo. Authorities were contacted and they came to investigate, but all that was left behind were large footprints around the family's property, leading back into the woods. A number of other residents also made reports about a similar creature around the same time, including the Caton's neighbor. It's still a complete mystery, though, as to what this thing was.
In a remarkable discovery beneath the Arctic sea ice, University of Manitoba graduate student Aurélie Delaforge uncovered Canada's first scientifically confirmed monster. This tiny creature, just 2 millimeters long, is a new species of copepod from the Monstraloida family named Monstralopsis planifrons, or the flat-headed monster. With its translucent body, bristly legs, 1 weak eye, and 2 antennae covered in ragged hairs, it swims through the dark waters of Cambridge Bay, Nunavut. Despite its monstrous name, this zooplankton is harmless and fascinating. Delaforge wasn't intentionally seeking for new species. While sampling ocean water during her PhD research on plankton blooms, she encountered the copepod during its rare adult form, which only appears for 2 months a year. Her background in taxonomy paired with fortunate timing allowed her to recognize the oddity in her samples. After sending her findings to a leading expert in Mexico, the creature was confirmed as a new species, officially adding to Canada's Arctic biodiversity. Delaforge's discovery, published in the journal Zookeys, highlights the mysteries still lurking in the Arctic today. As she puts it, quote, "When we study the Arctic, there are still things we don't know. This is a good example." A new dragonfly species, Epithemsis wayandensis, or the red-rumped hawklet, has been discovered in the lush forests of Wyandot, part of the Western Ghats. This species stands out due to its darker pigmentation, a distinct red patch on its abdomen, and the absence of a yellow stripe seen in related species. This discovery was made by a team of researchers from Christ College, India, and the Max Planck Institute in Germany during a study of Kerala's insects. Genetic analysis revealed a surprising 12% difference from its closest relative, confirming it as a new species. This dragonfly is highly seasonal, appearing only in October before spending the rest of the year as larvae. The findings were published in the Journal of Asia-Pacific Biodiversity. In March 2021, 14-year-old Davis Marthin Damiletto set out with his father on a journey through the countryside near their home in eastern Indonesia. What started as an exploration of his lifelong fascination with the natural world quickly turned into a groundbreaking discovery. During their trek, Davis stumbled upon a strange-looking insect that he had never seen before. Rather than ignoring it, Davis collected the unusual creature and brought it home, where he then reached out to Garda Bagus Damastra, founder of the Indonesian Mantis and Phasmid Forum. After careful study and collaboration with international entomologists, Davis's discovery was confirmed as a brand new species of stick insect. This species is the first of its genus ever recorded in the area, and only the second distinct stick insect species from the island. Remarkably, Davis monitored the entire development of the insect from egg to adulthood, helping researchers better understand this new addition to science. For Davis, this achievement at such a young age is a proud reminder of the importance of curiosity and exploration, especially when it comes to the often overlooked world of insects. In 2024, researchers discovered a new species of Antarctic dragonfish off the western Antarctic peninsula. Nicknamed the banded dragonfish, it was identified through genetic analysis of larval specimens initially mistaken for a related species. However, after comparing DNA from samples worldwide, scientists realized the genetic differences pointed to a new species. This new species is notable for the two distinct bands on its sides, a feature not found in its close relatives. This discovery highlights both the unknown biodiversity of the Antarctic and the fragile state of its ecosystem, as the dragonfish has a limited range and could be vulnerable to environmental changes and commercial fishing. The species was named in honor of the recently decommissioned research vessel Lawrence M. Gould, which played a very vital role in Antarctic exploration.
Why is it that given the vast number of stars and potentially habitable planets, we haven't encountered any signs of extraterrestrial life, at least not officially anyway? Where is everybody? This question is known as the Fermi paradox, named after the Italian-American physicist Enrico Fermi, who blurted out, "But where is everybody?" during a conversation he was having with some fellow physicists about UFOs. And yeah, where are they? Are they avoiding contact? Are they deeper into space than their technology will allow them to reach us? Or, as unlikely as it may be, are we actually just totally alone out here? We've been searching for signals from space for decades and sending out signals of our own, but nothing concrete has ever turned up. Some scientists believe that advanced civilizations might be out there, but are avoiding us deliberately. They might be following a kind of zoo hypothesis where they are just observing us from afar but don't interfere, almost like a wildlife documentary. Others think that the distances between stars and the limits of our technology is just keeping us from finding each other. Or maybe advanced civilizations have self-destructed. There's a theory that as societies develop technology, they also develop the means to destroy themselves, kind of inadvertently. And that's a pretty chilling thought, that as we become more advanced, we're walking this dangerous line between progress and total annihilation. Of course, this all brings me to the elephant in the room though, the theories that governments or space agencies already know about alien civilizations, but are keeping them hidden from the public. So while we don't really know the answer to the Fermi paradox, whatever it is might be more terrifying than we can imagine. Archaeologists and historians have discovered ruins and artifacts that suggest there were once civilizations with incredibly sophisticated technology. Usually Egypt is the first to come to mind. Think about the Great Pyramids, which were built thousands of years ago with precision. It's still baffling to us today. How did they manage that without modern tools? Did they have knowledge and technology that have just been lost to time? There are also legends of civilizations like Atlantis that supposedly had amazing technology before mysteriously vanishing, and some think these ancient civilizations might have been in contact with extraterrestrial beings and had access to their technology. Could there be remnants of this technology hidden or buried somewhere? It's an exciting idea, but here's a more unsettling aspect of the whole super advanced ancient civilizations thing. For as advanced and sophisticated as they were, they aren't around anymore. Great civilizations like Rome, the ancient Maya, the list goes on, they fell. It's safe to say they would have never expected it to either, and neither do we. We may fear our society breaking down, but there's always that reassuring part of our brains telling us, no, we're too advanced, too far ahead of our time. We can't go out the way ancient societies did, but that's exactly what they would have said. Artificial intelligence has come a long way. from basic algorithms to advanced systems that can learn and adapt. The idea of AI gaining consciousness, though, is where people get understandably concerned. Imagine a world where machines don't just process data, but actually think and feel like humans do. This is a very real possibility. Right now, AI can mimic human conversation and even pass as human in some situations, eerily, but is it really aware? Well, some scientists believe that with enough complexity, AI could reach a point where it develops kind of its own form of consciousness, like Data from Star Trek. As cool as it would be to have a real-life Data friend, the scary possibilities are very much in your face. What if AI starts to think for itself and makes decisions that aren't in our best interest? It's scary to think, but there could be advanced AI projects already working on this, and we might be closer to creating conscious machines than we realize. Some even speculate, again, that governments or tech giants might be keeping breakthroughs under wraps, either because they're too dangerous and too revolutionary for the public to handle, or they just don't want people to panic and want to kind of ease us in to being taken over by artificially intelligent machines instead. Quantum entanglement is the idea that particles can become linked, so the state of one instantly influences the state of another, no matter how far apart they are. It's sometimes referred to as spooky action at a distance. Some scientists believe that quantum entanglement could be the key to real-life teleportation, which would be incredible. No more long car rides, no more buses. I don't really think I need to sell you on this. And this is gonna sound nuts, but scientists have already managed to teleport information between particles. We're still far from teleporting humans, but the possibility is there. But what if teleportation isn't just a possibility, but a reality? We've all heard of things like the Philadelphia experiment, where teleportation technology was supposedly tested and was successful, but with very bad consequences. You know, like the entire crew of a ship being fused into the metal of the boat, with other guys just disappearing altogether, forever lost in some mysterious black void. Well, there are other urban legends and conspiracy theories that say governments have made significant breakthroughs in teleportation and, of course, are keeping it secret. The idea of being able to instantly transport items or people across long distances raises all sorts of security issues, and it's easy to imagine how technology like this, as cool as it would be, could also be used for some pretty terrifying things. I've talked a lot about discoveries scientists may or may not be hiding, but how about a proven case where a scientific experiment was completely kept under wraps? There are plenty to choose from, but between 1945 and 1947, there were a series of highly controversial experiments that were carried out on human test subjects across different hospitals in the United States. What they were testing were the effects of various radioactive elements on the human body. There were about 30 test subjects injected with stuff like uranium, plutonium, polonium, all to see how long it would remain in the body and the effect it would have on it, and surprisingly, it wasn't good. The entire experiment was kept a complete secret until documents were finally released in 1995. By that point, though, all the test subjects had died. So when you look at this image here, you probably assume this poor guy died instantly being crushed by this boulder, right? Well, it turns out that may not be the case. Don't get me wrong, he still died horrifically though. In fact, he went out in a much worse way. This is the body of a man who's been dubbed the Unluckiest Man, and he died in Pompeii during the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. Archaeologists recently removed the boulder to examine the remains and found that the dude's skull was surprisingly intact. The Pompeii Archaeological Park made a statement about the discovery, saying, quote, "The identified skeletal remains consist of the upper part of the thorax, the upper limbs, the skull, and jaw. His death was presumably not, therefore, due to the impact of the stone block, as initially assumed, but likely to asphyxia caused by the pyroclastic flow." So this dude was trapped under a boulder. Yeah, I'd say he really lives up to his name. Yippee for him.
Next up, we have the Sandby Borg killings discovered in 2010 during a study of a 5th century Swedish site in the island of Öland. While excavating the grounds, an archaeologist stumbled upon the ruins of an old home, and while exploring the home, they came across a human skeleton. At first, they wondered why it wouldn't have been given a proper burial, but then they came across another, and another, until the remains of 26 people were counted by the team, all showing signs of having died at the same time due to execution-style killing killings, it became apparent then that a mass killing event had taken place in the home sometime between 450 and 550 AD. Also found in the home were fossilized half-eaten fish, coins, and jewelry, supporting the theory of an ambush attack. But there was no evidence to suggest who carried out the killings or why.
Here's a pretty strange recent find: plastic rocks in nature. Scientists have been looking at Brazil's volcanic Trindade Island for years, but just in 2023 there was an unsettling discovery: rocks made from melted plastic debris. The island has always been a nesting ground for green turtles, but now it's also home to these strange plastic-infused rocks. The plastic rocks are being called plastiglomerates. Plastiglomeratis? Well, they're formed from a mixture of natural sediments and plastic. So they form on plastic waste, mainly from fishing nets apparently, melts and combines with the natural material on the beach. Geologist Fernanda Avelar Santos said the place where we found these samples is a permanently preserved area in Brazil, near the place green turtles lay their eggs. This makes the discovery even more alarming, as it highlights how pervasive plastic pollution has become. She continues, the garbage in the sea and the plastic dumped incorrectly in the oceans is becoming geological material preserved in the Earth's geological records. Interesting to see what'll happen like 100 years from now when this continues to happen.
Next up, we have a discovery made in 2003 by a group of archaeologists exploring the Atacama Desert of Chile. A mummified skeleton that, at first glance, looks a bit like it belongs to the body of someone or something that did not find its origins on this planet. I mean, it has 10 ribs instead of 12, giant eye sockets, and an incredibly elongated skull that ends in a point. For decades, UFO enthusiasts were convinced that the skeleton belonged to an alien, so much so that the mummy was actually featured in a 2013 UFO documentary. Unfortunately for the believers, in 2018 the alien theory was debunked when good old DNA testing decided to join the party. Turns out the genes were 100% human, and the body belonged to a young female living 500 years ago with severe genetic bone mutations. Or so they say.
And finally, we have Aramu Maru. This place sounds really intriguing to me. So Aramu Maru is a rock formation near Lake Titicaca in Peru, which has some very strange stories attached to it. So this massive stone structure is often referred to as the Gate of the Gods. It stands about 23 feet tall and has a perfectly carved 7-meter high rectangular niche in its center. So the question has always been, though, what is the origin of this place? What was it made for? Local folklore tells tales of the pre-Inca civilization, suggesting that Amaru Muru is a gateway to another dimension. According to the legend, Aramu Muru was an ancient priest who used a golden disc known as the Key of the Gods of the Seven Rays to open the portal and pass through it with his followers, never to be seen again. But archaeologists and researchers, of course, have their own theories. Some think that the place is a ceremonial site, possibly linked to nearby Tiwanaku culture, known for its advanced understanding of stone carving and alignment with astronomy. Until this day, though, the true origin and the purpose of this place is still relatively unknown. But what makes it even weirder is that there are a number of stories of people going missing around here. There are also reports of a strange bluish glow coming from the area. Next up on the list, we have underwater pyramids in Cuba. There is a lot of controversy surrounding the so-called underwater pyramids off the coast of Cuba. Discovered by oceanographer Pauline Zalitsky and her husband Paul Weinswig in 2000, these structures lie at a depth of around 2,000 feet. So when images of this underwater site were first released, people looked at them and were like, that looks like some kind of underwater pyramid or something. Are these structures that maybe are part of some ancient lost civilization? The mysterious alignment of the structures has also led some to propose extraterrestrial involvement. The idea that maybe these pyramids could be part of an ancient alien civilization's underwater base. Just like with many cases of this kind, some also claim that governments and mainstream archaeologists are suppressing information about the site to maintain the status quo. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have, of course, these skeptics. They basically just said these are natural formations, and what folks are seeing is just a case of pareidolia. While many remain skeptical about the existence of an advanced ancient civilization beneath the waves, looking at these images, you really can't deny how uncanny some of these formations look. And number 4, we have Bimini Road. Bimini Road, discovered off the coast of North Bimini Island in the Bahamas in 1968, has again a lot of controversy surrounding it. It consists of a series of rectangular limestone blocks arranged in a linear pattern, looking almost like a road. The discovery was first made by pilots flying over the area, and then underwater expeditions confirmed the existence of the submerged structure. Now, according to mainstream scientists, Bimini Road consists of beach rock, a result of sand and shell fragments cementing over time. So many of them believe it isn't man-made, but there are more interesting theories. Some propose an Atlantis connection, that maybe the structure is a remnant of the mythical lost city. There's just too many straight lines and right angles in the formation for it to be some natural occurrence, and there are theories not linked with Atlantis, the possibility of some other advanced prehistoric civilization predating the known cultures. And because the internet exists and there are people with all kinds of crazy ideas all over the globe, there are even more outlandish theories about this formation, some claiming technological anomalies associated with the stones, like unusual magnetic fields and unexplained energy readings. Alright, back to some mysterious creature stuff though. The yellow belly sea monster. On September 11th of 1876, Captain John K. Webster and James Anderson aboard the Nestor saw something they'd truly never forget. It was an unidentified sea creature while off the coast of Malaysia. They described the thing as about 60 to 100 feet in length. It looked a bit like a large tadpole with a flat necklace head. It didn't seem to have any fins or flippers either, and its yellow skin had a prominent black stripe running along its spine. About 9 years later, on October 4th of 1885, a similar creature was observed in South Africa. Witnesses reported a 90-foot creature with yellow skin, black stripes, but this creature had fins on either side. In 1965, Bernard Heuvelmans, a Belgian-French scientist, explorer, researcher, also often referred to as the father of cryptozoology, looked at these two sightings and then categorized the creature as the yellow belly. He believed it could be an unknown shark species or possibly an amphibian, creating a classification for tadpole-like sea monsters on a bigger scale. Of course, the most famous yellow belly sighting, though, occurred on December 12th of 1964 near Hook Island, Queensland. Robert Lasarick and his family, along with a friend, spotted an 80-foot creature in the shallow water. At first they thought it was dead because of a visible wound, but it opened its mouth and began swimming towards their boat. The creature had smooth, dark skin with brown stripes, no visible fins or teeth, and slit-shaped pupils. Then the family just got out of there. At number 2, we have the underwater Stonehenge. Off the shores of Lake Michigan lies an intriguing underwater discovery known as the underwater Stonehenge. Researchers came across the site while using sonar technology to explore the lake's floor. The underwater formation features a cluster of stones arranged in a circular or horseshoe-type pattern, looking a lot like the renowned Stonehenge in England. In terms of the mainstream scientific world, experts propose that the stones may be natural geological formations. That always seems to be their go-to. People will be like, look at this, and then they're like, it's natural, it's natural. While others think that this site might hold evidence of an ancient civilization predating recorded history. The stones seem to be placed in this very precise alignment, and of course, Atlantis always comes into the conversation. Finally, though, we have another story posted to Reddit. This one by user Tamu. Actually, we have 2 short stories here. They go as follows. This isn't my story, but my dad's. So when he was in grad school, he did some field studies classes, some of which involved diving in Monterey Bay. One day he was diving, counting something off the Santa Cruz Pier, and he finds a shopping cart with bricks and cinder blocks and a chain attached to the handle. He naturally followed the chain and found a bare foot wrapped in the chain. He assumes something probably ate the rest of the body, and apparently his friends had seen similar things too. Also not mine, but my dad's friend. He says he was on a shelf counting mussels when he felt something tap his tank. He looked around, didn't see anything. He figured it was a seal, because they like to play. When he was nudged again, he saw it was a great white. He says he thought to himself, if it gets me, it gets me. I can't outswim it. Now, I don't know if he was actually that chill. I sure wouldn't be, but that's how he tells it. So that second story really gets me. Like, the foot is super creepy, but turning around to see a great white right next to you, and you're in its habitat, and you just have that acceptance of like, there's nothing I can do in this situation. That is fear on like a true primal level. Yeah, spooky. Next up, we have a jogger who captured a pretty creepy image and didn't even know about it until later. A runner named Kay Borlees was on an endurance run with the Hawaiian ultra running team. During a particularly harsh stretch of the loop, full of tree roots and water crossings, she ended up injuring her foot and had to pull out of the race. Her pacer, Cassie, had been capturing images the entire time though, so she had some photos to show her friends and family. As she scrolled through the images, something caught her eye though, something that sent a shiver down her spine. It looked like a ghoulish figure had been peering out at her from the brush. Take a look. Kay posted her story along with the images to Reddit, and they were blowing up recently. And it makes sense, because that is a pretty creepy image. It looks like a zombie is walking through the woods there. Both Cassie and Kay didn't remember seeing anyone else on that part of the trail, saying tourists weren't out that early. We didn't see anyone for hours while running together, so we were, and still are, positive there was no one there.
Next up, we have yet another body discovered in the woods near Vietnam Veterans Memorial Bridge in Lewiston in Maine. On Friday afternoon, on the 3rd of May of this year, a body was found inside a tent in the wooded area beneath the bridge. Authorities were called and police arrived at the scene shortly after, around 4:30. Of course, as is with everything on the list, this is incredibly recent. I mean, you did click on a video about disturbing things found in 2024, just 5 months into 2024. So there's not much information. What has been released to the public though is that the body was removed from the area and brought to a medical examiner. The person's identity as well as the cause of death remains unknown.
One of the creepiest things about the woods to me are all the noises. Through the dense vegetation and the sheer size of some forests, you never really know what could be lurking out there. So when you hear something like this, yeah, it makes you pretty uneasy. That sounded like the werewolf howl from An American Werewolf in London. If you've seen the movie, you know the one. Not what I want to hear while trekking alone through the forest. The video was taken in a forest somewhere in eastern Canada a few months back. Now, it being the Canadian wilderness, there are tons of things that could have made a sound like that. Doesn't make it sound any less frightening though. It could be a moose call. But have you ever seen a moose up close? They're gigantic. And there's also the possibility that it is a Sasquatch call. Can't write that off either.
Next up, believe it or not, is not a dead body, just an incredibly creepy abandoned home filled with creepy and decrepit knickknacks. Earlier this year, 2 Canadian urban explorers stumbled upon an abandoned home while exploring in Ontario. As the explorers entered the home, they were greeted by a doll sitting on the staircase, and many other vintage dolls and toys were scattered around the house, some in okay condition for an abandoned house, that is, and some not really. Many stuffed animals had been ripped to shreds and strewn across the floor, making for a pretty eerie sight. As the explorers made their way through the home, they were greeted in each and every room by another pair of lifeless, unblinking doll eyes. One of the explorers even said that it was the strangest abandoned house they had ever seen, and that it was also super creepy. If you have a fear of dolls, I wouldn't suggest seeking this place out, because I don't know, you might pee your pants.
This next story comes to us from Reddit. It was posted about 6 months back from a now deleted user. I hope they're okay. It goes as follows. Hey everyone, I need to get this off my chest. Something weird happened to me yesterday and I can't shake the feeling that I was being followed. So I decided to take a hike in the ravine near my house. It's usually pretty quiet, but yesterday things felt off right from the start. About halfway into my hike, I started hearing twigs snapping behind me. At first I thought it was just an animal, maybe a raccoon, but when I turned around, there was nothing there. I shrugged it off and kept walking, but I kind of felt like I was being watched. Then I started to hear footsteps. Not the rustling of leaves or the scurrying of small animals, but distinct footsteps, like someone was walking right behind me. I stopped. I looked around, but again, nobody there. At this point, I started to feel really uneasy. I picked up my pace, hoping to shake off whatever was following me, but the footsteps kept getting closer. I could almost feel someone breathing down my neck. I broke into a sprint. I didn't stop until I burst out of the ravine and back onto the street. When I finally caught my breath, I glanced back at the trees, half expecting to see someone standing right there, but there was nothing. I don't know what to make of it. Maybe it was just my imagination playing tricks on me, but I can't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone in there.
And finally, we have the discovery of a 22-million-year-old forest located in the Panama Canal. And while this discovery is not spooky scary, like unknown beings and unsolved deaths, it's scary in the sense that it reminds us that we really know nothing about the planet that we live on. Earlier this year, scientists discovered a 22-million-year-old forest that had previously disappeared after a volcanic eruption. They discovered remnants of the forest on Barrow, Colorado Island after noticing fossilized trees on the island that they believe were likely all buried and fossilized by volcanic lava flow in the same massive event. The fossilized trees represent a species of mangrove previously unknown, and it is believed that they can grow to be upward of 131 feet tall, which is wild considering modern-day mangroves generally grow to be only about 20 feet.
Well, next time you guys are exploring in the forests, please do be careful, and if something does happen to you, don't forget to write it down for us to share.
Let us know. Alright, you guys, have been your host, Hannah Thompson.
I've been your host, James.
See you next time.
Want to see more videos like this one? Check out this video next. This video is about real encounters with demons from the Bible that will leave you shaking from head to toe. Are you too scared to check it out? Click the video now. Viewer discretion is heavily advised.